Today I'm going to do the Neon Genesis Evangelion Iceberg. Now, if you don't know what an iceberg is, it's basically just a list of topics made by the community or someone on Reddit. And at the top, you got commonly known things, just easy things. And at the bottom, they get real fucking stupid and also very obscure. So we'll be starting from the top here. First off, these two episodes used up a lot of footage that was already used before, and they also didn't have a lot of new animation. So this is because they ran out of funding, but also they ran out of time. They simply didn't have enough time to animate and give it a true ending that they wanted, and that ended up becoming the end of Evangelion. This is basically confirmed by Misato in episode 25, where she tells Shinji that humans are the 18th angel. Also, humans are some sort of flawed angel, and that's why the angels are out to attack them and get rid of them since they're not supposed to be there. Let's define a continuity first. The unbroken and consistent existence or operation of something over a period of time. It can easily be proven that the manga and the rebuild are different continuities because they simply can't end the same. The manga ended one way, which I won't spoil, and the rebuilds are going to end the way that just cannot be the same as the manga. They're way too different. So therefore, they cannot be the same continuity. They can't be the same because of what happens after the near third impact. So after the near third impact, in the rebuilds, it takes a completely different direction from what it does in the manga. And since the continuity is the unbroken and consistent existence or operation of something, it's not consistent, and it's also not something that stays the same over a period of time. This one's one of the less subtle parts of the anime. It's really obvious the CEO really wants human instrumentality to happen. They have their constant meetings with Gendo checking on how the project is going, but they also have their reactions when they get turned into fucking Fanta. They love it. This is exactly what they wanted. So yeah, CEO is behind human instrumentality. At least the process of making it happen. This apparently is true after a 2-minute Google search I did. So the angels come from Adam while the humans come as a byproduct of Lilith. The angels were on Earth before humans ever appeared, therefore that's why humans are seen as some sort of usurpers, since the angels are the rightful inhabitants of Earth. Some of the angels have been on Earth since the very start, but they lay dormant. You can see this in the episode with the volcano. What even is a triple agent? Does that mean that Kaji just loops all the way back around and just works for the original group? Anyways, Kaji's definitely at least a double agent from what we can see. And you can see he's snooping around for Seal, but he's also working with Gendo, so he plays all sides. So Kaji's definitely, at the very least, a double agent. In episode 21 and 23, it is basically confirmed that humans came from Lilith. And it's also in some fucking PS2 game that I cannot get a hold of. Nope, they aren't. It's pretty obvious from the start of the show that they aren't machines. That armor they have doesn't just protect them, it also restrains them. Also, it's explicitly shown that they're biological beings when Unit 01 fucking tears one apart and eats the other unit. So it's obvious that they are biological in nature. Yeah, the Evangelion units did come from Adam, the first angel. It's probably a biblical reference where Eve came from the rib of Adam. If you had a history class, you probably know about the Dead Sea Scrolls, since they're a real thing. They were found in the Qumran caves of Israel. They are Hebrew religious manuscripts in the simplest of terms. They are heavily referenced in Evangelion, since a lot of the religious imagery and language is used directly taken from Judaism and Hebrew religions. So in Evangelion, the scrolls are also present, but instead of just being religious manuscripts, they are the roadmap for the Human Instrumentality project. In Evangelion, everything that Seo considered not useful in the scrolls was revealed to the public, but Seo kept the whole Human Instrumentality part of it as a secret. This one is technically true, as it's referenced several times in the show that half of the human population was killed. However, an exact figure is never known. Also, they don't ever talk about the animals to see if they were also killed, but what you do see is some sort of conservation effort going on in the second rebuild movie, so it is very likely that a lot of animals also died during the impact. This is true. I don't know why this decision was made. Maybe Hiroeki Anno has a thing for moms, but it is confirmed that at least Unit 01 and 02 have the pilot's dead mother's soul inside of them. The psychological links between the pilots and their dead mom is what allows them to control the Evangelion units. Obviously, that's also why their own children have to be the ones to pilot the Evas. So, in keeping with the tradition of the pilot's dead mother being inside the Evangelion, Unit 01 has Yui's soul because Yui is Shinji's mother, therefore, she's the one that has to be in there for Shinji to be able to control the Evangelion. Also, it's shown in a bunch of flashbacks that she's heavily involved in the creation of the Evangelions, and she's all for dying just so she can be in the Evangelion. This is a theory that has been bounced around for a while, like I've seen it a lot of times before. There's never going to be a definite, irrefutable answer to it. Episode 25 and 26 are Shinji coming to terms with himself and his mental problems. It takes place inside of Shinji's mind, so there isn't any way to know when it happened or what is happening outside. This is where the famous congratulations scene comes from, by the way. And Evangelion takes place outside of Shinji's mind for the most part, and it's that canonical ending to the show. The concurrency of episode 25 plus 26 and end of Evangelion is kind of like Schrodinger's cat. It could be happening at the same time, but also maybe it isn't. And the only way to know is by opening the metaphorical box that is what's going on outside of Shinji's mind during the last 2 episodes. So we'll never know for sure. Naoko's the designer of the Magi supercomputer that basically handles a lot of the decision making and processing for NERV. The Magi supercomputers are directly based on the 3 aspects of Naoko herself. This theory comes from episode 13, where a brain is seen inside of the systems of the Magi supercomputer. Since Naoko based the 3 aspects of the Magi supercomputer on her own personality, it would make sense that after her death, her brain was placed inside, right? Well, it's probably not her brain. Naoko killed herself after choking out the first Rei clone to death. She then killed herself by jumping head first onto fucking concrete from a pretty good height. And as you can see, she's literally splattered against the floor. So how can her brain be in the Magi if it's scattered all over the floor when she died? And even if it was retrieved, the brain shown doesn't have any significant damage. So it's probably not her brain, but just some other brain. Now this one's got me really fucking confused. I don't know if it's talking about the characters literally being stars or just having symbolism based on each star, but whatever. Asuka is constantly seen with the sun in the background or her blocking out the sun. Asuka's mech is also red, and when she is shown in some scenes, she is shown a circle of sun color light. This is just because her character traits are like the sun, maybe. She's full of energy, pretty reckless, outspoken, things that are sometimes associated with the sun. Rei is supposed to be the contrast to Asuka, so it only makes sense that she is shown with moon-related imagery. In the ending, Rei is shown literally in front of the moon, and one time in episode 6, she is once again juxtaposing the moon. Rei is supposed to be the calm, passive, and cold one, so this is basically just imagery and not of much relevance to the plot. This theory exists because people think that Asuka came back as like all 3 girls, with part of all 3 girls, with the arm sling kind of like Rei and the brown eyes kind of like Misato, but all these things can be explained away. Asuka has the arm sling because her mech literally lost an arm and she felt the pain of that, therefore the arm sling. Also, her eyes look quote unquote brown because of the shading of the scene. It's all red around her, therefore they made the eyes kind of tinted that way too. After looking this one up, I found the wiki that supposedly Unit 01 is made from Lilith, since the other units were made by using pieces of Adam as their base. I also read a theory that Unit 01 is made from the severed legs of Lilith, who is seen to be missing her legs when she's in the Geofront basement. Maybe its unique conception is likely what gives it different qualities compared to the other mechs. Now we're getting to the depths of the iceberg. Obviously the topics will reflect that, and there will be more out there and more out there as we go further down. So the atoms are supposedly this spooky fucks on screen, and I honestly didn't know about them prior to this. And honestly, I have no idea what they are. I mean, they're obviously made of light, they're some form of angel, and I don't know why there's 4 of them. There really isn't much known about these dudes. Maybe we learn more in the next movie. This topic is the one that really opens up for the tinfoil hat worthy theories. So this one's the Neon Genesis time loop theory. That theory is based on saying that the manga, TV show, and reboots are different little time loops that are only different because the characters took slightly different actions, leading to slightly different conclusions. There is some evidence of the TV show and the rebuild being the same continuity, like the giant bloodstay on the moon, the rebuilds, that could have only come from when giant Rei split open her neck at the end of Evangelion. But I'm going to let you into a little secret, alright? Let's just keep this between you and me. These references to older media are just that. They are just references. Hiroaki Anno just likes referencing his older works. Anyways, so the TV shows one loop. At the end of that, where Shinji and Asuka are on the shore, the time loop would reset to the start of the rebuilds. And when the rebuilds are done, the whole continuity would reset to the start of the manga. Now you might be asking, why would the last loop be the manga? Well, this one actually has a quote-unquote satisfying conclusion, so I'd assume it'd be the last one in the time loops. This is one of the topics that I dreaded having to cover, but I'm still going to give it a shot. I think the best way to see this theory would be to look at the video Do You Love Me theory, since that video basically has every piece of evidence neatly laid out already. I'll try to summarize the theory though. Shinji and Asuka supposedly had sex during episode 15. This is supported by things that Asuka says herself and the circumstances. In episode 15, Shinji and Asuka had kissed already and are basically alone the whole night since Misato, their guardian, is blacked out drunk. During the time an angel invaded Asuka's mind, there are some peculiar sounds in the background that could be interpreted as moaning, and there is Asuka's voice asking, "Do you love me?" but in a very whispery and kinda intimate tone. Asuka says she's been defiled, implying loss of innocence. To add more, at the end of episode 16, there are some more interesting voice lines during the ending. During Instrumentality, Asuka has some lines where her and Shinji are basically watching a replayed memory of Misato and Kaji doing some questionable activities. Asuka implies that she has some familiarity with sex. Since Instrumentality happens after episode 15 and 16, it gives some credence that maybe something did happen during episode 15. Now this one directly ties to the last topic for some pretty obvious reasons. But unlike the last theory that has some pretty good points and an abundance of them, this one has a little less points. The main point of evidence is the very last thing Asuka says at the end of Evangelion. Asuka says, "Kimochi warui." Now this line supposedly has no direct or perfect translation to English, according to people that know Japanese and English, so I'm gonna be inclined to believe them. Now there is some imperfect translations to English, like "I feel sick," "I don't feel well," "What a disgusting feeling," "How disgusting," "I don't like this feeling," "This feeling sucks." Some people have interpreted this as Asuka having morning sickness. There's even a rumor that Hiroaki Anno asked Asuka's voice actress to say what she would say if she had morning sickness, so she came up with Kimochi warui. Asuka could have said she's disgusted just to be mean to Shinji. Just a little before she said this, she was basically a liquid with her consciousness melted into literally everyone else's consciousness, so maybe that's what felt disgusting. Maybe she said it because she was just getting choked by Shinji and now Shinji's literally on top of her crying. There's literally so many interpretations that are more likely than Asuka being suddenly feeling morning sickness right at that very moment. So all Evas are explicitly stated to need a human soul to function, specifically the soul of the mother. Now, Naoko's not Rei's mother. Also, Naoko literally fucking killed the first Rei clone. So why would they pick Naoko, since the thing that allows the Evangelions to work is the connection to their mothers? Rei is not connected to Naoko in any way, and Naoko fucking hates Rei and has no relation to her. So it's very unlikely that Naoko's soul is there. The first ancestral race was the super advanced and presumably extinct race that created basically the weird aspects of Evangelion, like the seeds of life, which give life to everything, the spirit longinus, and the moons that carry the seeds of life as some sort of parting gift. They are first mentioned in the Neon Genesis proposal, and as we go further down the iceberg, this damn book will be mentioned several times, so keep it in mind. It was a promotional book made 2 years before the show started, so it shows a lot of early concepts. Now this theory is mostly based on a conversation Yui had with Itsuki in episode 21, in which she states that her life is in danger because her interests do not align with Seal. Anyway, she chooses to be the test subject for one of the very first experiments done in the creation of the Evangelion unit, knowing her soul would be trapped and she would basically die. So according to this theory, she did this so A, she wouldn't just get killed off by Seal for knowing too much and having a different goal, and B, she would still retain or at least be involved in all of events after her death. Also, she brought Shinji along for him to witness an experiment that killed her, knowing that she would die that day. Neon Genesis has a shit ton of religious references. The angels have a somewhat biblically accurate look to them, and the whole anime is extremely religious, but I would be hard pressed to believe that the third impact is the rapture. In the biblical rapture, the ones worthy who haven't sinned too much basically would be lifted up to heaven, alongside the ones that are already dead. They would be resurrected and lifted to heaven. It's basically the Christian endgame. Now, the third impact doesn't really fit the rapture, because everyone that is alive is turned into LCL and just becomes a form of higher existence that every individual is mixed together into. The rapture has several key differences, like only the ones worthy get to ascend, and dead people also get to ascend. Neither one of these things are consistent with third impact, so I feel fairly confident that the rapture isn't third impact, but it is the equivalent event because the third impact is the endgame in Evangelion. Mass-produced Evas use a dummy plug system, which basically makes them AI controlled. It isn't really artificial since they are controlled using upper stop patterns, so it depends on, I guess, if you consider AI made directly from a person. They have souls or they don't. It's up to interpretation. We are to the point that there no longer is an iceberg. It's just darkness. And these fucking theories are just like that. Some of them are just straight up darkness. No factualness to them, but they are very interesting, so we're gonna go over them. So first impact was the literal impact of the black moon hitting the earth and bringing the seeds of life, which would eventually become humanity. But yeah, first impact seems to fit the description of a very early asteroid that hit the earth, so there's some probable evidence that the first impact could have killed the dinosaur, or whatever was on earth at the time. Now we're getting really fucking meta here. Some people believe that the end of Evangelion movie was made by Anno to fuck with fans who hated the ending of the TV show. The TV show ending is just a psychoanalysis of Shinji's mind and not a climatic mech fight like some fans expected. Now, why do some fans feel this way? Well, to put it simply, the movie's kinda fucked. You get to see Nerva employees mercilessly murder, Misato gets shot and then blown in half. Asuka dies a horrible death, and all the characters you have seen for the last 26 episodes get turned into orange juice in a religious endgame scenario that is the third impact. This theory gets a little more traction when combined with Anno's several comments of his displeasure with the otaku community. Neon Genesis is basically one of the crown jewels of the otaku community, so supposedly Anno made the movie like that to get back at them. Now, a movie takes several years to make, and it goes through several committees. End of Evangelion was likely just a true planned ending that Anno wanted. So let's define Primordial Soup, or life broth. In the simplest terms, imagine some shitty puddle that was warm enough and had just the right amount of things inside from which the first life forms basically spawn from. So what is LCL? LCL is that liquid in which the pilots are submerged in when they pilot the Evas and they can somehow breathe inside and not drown. It is also Lilith's blood or angel blood from which humans came from in Evangelion. So both liquids are sort of similar as the compound from which life came from. So LCL is equivalent to Primordial Soup, but not Primordial Soup. Primordial Soup was hot as fuck as it existed in the time in which the earth was just fucking hell. Also, humans directly come from Primordial Soup. Their first ancestor did. In Evangelion, humans directly came from LCL. I mean, maybe. There just isn't any way to know who exactly killed him. There's 3 agencies which would want him dead. Nerve, CO, and some other agency. Since he is a triple spy, all these organizations would be highly motivated to kill him, but I just can't tell which one did it, since there's not enough evidence to know who was gonna do it. He knew he was going to get capped by the fact that he left Misato a farewell message. It isn't uncommon, at least in media, for spies to be killed once they serve their role, so this was pretty expected. This is just one of those theories where there isn't much to go off of. There's too many candidates, too many motives, and in the manga, he also just dies by some random. This is one of those theories that has basically been proven correct, so I would recommend you look at the wiki if you want to see the whole thing, but I'll try to summarize it here. This theory references the last silent words that Gendo tells Ritsuko before he busts a cap on her ass. Through a careful examination of previous scenes that use similar shot composition, like in the scene where Maya gets juiced, she types "I need you" into her computer while being embraced by a fake Ritsuko. Take note that this line is only written and never spoken. Also, at the end card of the episode reads as following: "The end of Evangelion. One more final, I need you." So I don't know. So far, it seems pretty conclusive, since that was Gendo's final, "I need you." So I'm just gonna say it's true. Y2K is so old, it even predates me. So let's see what Y2K was. Y2K was a problem that arose because years were usually listed as their last two digits. So under this system, 1900 and 2000 would be the same, thus presenting the problem on what would happen to computers the day that 2000 started. Soon, Y2K went from a programming problem that could be solved to people fear-mongering that this would be some sort of apocalypse scenario for humanity using religion, likely out of ignorance or some form of financial gain or some clout. But Y2K was forever etched in history as the day the world would end, like December 21st, 2012. How is this related to Second Impact? Second Impact also happens in the year 2000, but in the winter and not the start of the year. And as stupid as this sounds, Second Impact is Y2K if the religious leaders and fearmongers were right. I know, these motherfuckers were so wrong, they inadvertently caught us stray and were accidentally right in a 1995 Japanese show. Second Impact basically fits a lot of the things the dumbasses who believed in a Y2K apocalypse said, but obviously it's a coincidence. If you are so wrong so many times, eventually you might be right. It really depends. On a first look, she just seems inappropriate. Like the first thing that Shinji sees on Misato is basically a pinup that she sent him so he would recognize who she is. Not criminal yet. But what happens near the end of the show is the damning part where she basically offers herself up to Shinji to help with his depression, I guess, and kisses him and promises more adult things when he comes back. But I would argue that she isn't an E-word since she doesn't do it because of the attraction, but rather use her sexuality since she doesn't really know how to help with Shinji and assumes that's what a teenage boy would like. This ties into Misato's personal struggles with her sexuality, so I guess she isn't and is an E-word, depending on how specific you want to be. Your Nike decades on, heaping amounts of Sila lace applesauce and a tinfoil hat on, because that's the shit you need to be into to believe this one. So AT fields are basically what allows people to hold their form and not become owner shoes. It's what makes them individuals and why in their head they can only hear themselves, at least in Neon Genesis. So Neon Genesis references some real concepts and a lot of things Sigmund Freud came up with. So some psychological aspects in Neon Genesis do have real life relations and truth to them. For some reason, some people started believing that the term AT, which stands for absolute terror, is a real term that is used in the psychology field. This is pretty wrong. Like, a simple Google search shows that no one even uses AT fields outside of things related to Neon Genesis, so it isn't a real term. Try to recall what propaganda you have seen, be it some North Korean TikToks or World War II posters. What do these pieces try to do? They try to influence your perception of a topic through imagery and likely deception. Now think of religious imagery on Neon Genesis, and just think, how does this try to influence me? When I think of religious imagery on Neon Genesis, I think of giant space ladies, vaginal imagery, which I can't show here. It doesn't really try to persuade me or anything. So how would Neon Genesis be religious propaganda? It doesn't really push religion in a negative light, so it can be atheist propaganda. But it also isn't Christian servers squeaky clean either. So what the fuck is it trying to convey? It's not religious propaganda, but rather a show that uses pre-existing religion to have a real life connection and strengthen its plot. I just don't see how it can be propaganda. I don't watch Evangelion and have that urge to go to church or feel godless after watching it. Maybe I'm built different, or Neon Genesis simply isn't religious propaganda, at least according to my little made-up thought exercise. Do you remember when I mentioned the Neon Genesis proposal? This is one of the things that was cut as well. So, the proposal had a section where each episode was listed, and it has a small description of the plot of the episode. So, according to the translation of the proposal, episode 25 was titled Ark of the Promised Land, and the plot synopsis went as such. The laboratory holds the ancient ruins of Arca, which have become key. In order to stop the 12 Apostolos, the United Nations head members annul the Human Instrumentality Project and resolve to destroy the Apostolos. Shinji's father objects. Shinji and the others stay at the laboratory for Rei, a drama of people conflicting over incongruous objectives. Alright, right off the bat, we can see that the climax of the show was going to be different. Instead of 2 episodes of psychoanalysis, there was going to be an action-filled climax. From what I can gather from the small summary, the ruins were supposed to be in the NERV headquarters, likely where Central Dogma, or what are referred to as the basement, is. In the 26th episode of The Proposal, the episode summary went like this. On the stage of the Destroy Laboratory, all mysteries and drama are concluded, the denouement. So this place was supposed to be the key to the plot, and from the wording in the last episode summary, it was supposed to hold the key to everything. These ruins are referred to as ancient and likely linked to the first ancestral race. There really isn't any way to know what these ruins were supposed to look like, or have other than they were ancient and now key to defeating the 12 Apostolos, who are either angels or mass-produced Evas. It seems that the ruins are not related to instrumentality, but rather they would help or have something that would be useful against the 12 Apostolos. It can be surmised that the UN, which seems like they are just pre-Seal, changed their mind and opposed instrumentality. So that's basically it. The ruins of Arca are just scraps left on the cutting board, but they sound pretty cool. Kind of like a Halo concept or something of the sort. Something interesting to note is that since this is translated from Japanese, I'm uncertain if it's 12 angels / apostolos that descend from the moon, or just one super OP 12th angel. And I have no idea what it is, since I've seen 3 different translations that all contradict each other. The Evangelions were originally supposed to be based on Oni, which are Japanese ogres / demon beings with horns, and in early designs you can see that. But later on, they got this more mechanical, less biological look to them, and they took away the horn. So maybe that's why some people think that Evas are demons. But conceptually, they're supposed to be angels. Revisiting the ending of End of Evangelion, only Shinji and Asuka are left, 1 man and 1 woman, a situation mirroring Adam and Eve. Combined with all the religious imagery, the viewer couldn't really be faulted for believing that this reflects Adam and Eve. But to start off, the end of Evangelion is no paradise. Also, they probably aren't the only ones that can come back. During Instrumentality, Rei tells Shinji that anyone can return to human form as long as they can imagine themselves in their own heart. So it seems that anyone can come back as long as they're willing to embrace the pain and suffering that individuality brings. A lot of people would not come back. They would rather be in the sea of LCL where there is no pain, loneliness, or any misunderstanding. It seems that we only see Shinji and Asuka come back, either because they were the first ones that wanted to come back, or simply because the show follows the characters, so even if someone else came back first, they would not be shown. Shinji and Asuka don't seem to be Adam and Eve, but rather just a girl and a guy that came back together for some reason. Maybe romantic, maybe they were just close, but I find it hard to believe that only Shinji and Asuka would be the only ones that want to come back. Alright, who the fuck made this topic up? Because I cannot find any information about a supposed episode 27 and 28. Anytime I looked it up, I found a bunch of fanfictions. Y'all probably know how some fanfictions are. Some are pretty good, some would be questionable even to your FBI agent. I wasn't able to find anything to suggest there would be 2 additional episodes or that they were even planned. I checked the proposal and that only goes up to episode 26, so even from the start, that was the episode number decided on. So these episodes don't exist outside of a website called TV.com that wrongfully lists the movie Death and Rebirth as episode 27 and lists End of Evangelion as episode 28. So whoever the poor intern was at TV.com who wrote that shit, I hope you're happy now, because some people generally believe there's 2 extra episodes. The waifu wars are an endless series of proxy battles, fought by people who believe one 2D character is better than the other. They use weapons such as your waifu's trash and Rem is better than Emilia. But did Anno plan the first waifu war? Absolutely. We have already seen this man's capabilities. He manages to be an amazing director that builds a story about smokes and mirrors that ends up just being lonely people trying to come to terms with themselves. While in the minds of some, Anno's a dumbass that hates his audience and made a whole movie just to fuck with them. In all seriousness, he may not have been the creator of the first waifu war, but he definitely made his 2 female leads, Rei and Asuka, participants. They are different enough that people will still debate who is better to this day. Asuka vs. Rei is probably the longest running best girl debate that still holds some relevancy. Asuka and Rei help popularize the character archetypes immensely. Asuka's character is one of the most, if not the most iconic tsundere out there. Now, a tsundere is basically an aggressive character that isn't very honest about their feelings. Rei is the most popular or most well-known kudere out there. A kudere is a cold, blunt character that shows little emotion at the start, but later breaks down their barriers and shows emotions. Now, why did I give a class into the dere types? Well, to put it simply, by choosing to design the two female leads this way, Anno almost guaranteed that viewers will usually like one way more than the other, since they are so damn contrasting, thus leading to endless threads and people endlessly arguing that their choice is better. This damn conversation also hasn't been put to rest because of the Rebuild series that still isn't finished, so that will spark interest in Neon Genesis again, which in turn leads to more morons arguing who's the better girl, and that's perfectly okay with me. And Anno totally planned the first waifu war because at this point I could believe he planned anything. What does this even mean? Like, is Evangelion an anime that is heavily driven by a prophecy? Or Evangelion itself is the prophecy? I'm going to choose the latter, and I'm also going to get a little too big brain for my own good here, but maybe it's worth losing some brain cells over. I feel like the steer is a little outdated since we are now currently in 2021, and the events of the show supposedly happened in 2015. So if it was like super prophetic, it's already 6 years late, so points deducted for accuracy. But with all things, maybe some things in Evangelion do happen in real life, just by sheer coincidence and the infinite amount of possibilities out there. But that line of reasoning is moot because then everything would be prophetic to an extent, down to the dumbest shit. Evangelion is prophetic in its themes, but at the end of the day, it's just a show. It's simpler than most people make it out to be. Although on second thought, the prophetic nature is likely due to its ties to real life prophecies and religion, and maybe some people get that all mixed up. Another one that I'm not so sure what to think. And why is it so balls deep into the iceberg? So let's say First Impact never happened. What are the implications? There would be no show. Now why is that? Humans came from Lilith, who came from the Black Moon, and the impact of the Black Moon hitting the Earth is what caused the impact. It wasn't some weird magic event, it was literally just two rocks smashing into each other. The problem is this event has to happen for the show to happen. If First Impact never happens, Adam populates the Earth and everything goes as intended by the first ancestral race. If we start questioning one of the main events of the show and believe that every time First Impact is mentioned or referenced, that person speaking is lying or the director's trying to mislead you, then we can't believe anything in the show. The Black Moon was the carrier for Lilith, sent by the first ancestral race, while the White Moon was the carrier for Adam, the progenitor of the angels. Now this theory directly conflicts with the theory that the First Impact killed all the dinosaurs, since the Earth would have to already exist for dinosaurs to be there, for them to then be killed by First Impact. I'm gonna say this one's very unlikely, because when the first ancestral race decided to spread life by form of putting the seeds of life in the moons and sending them out to populate planets, the moons are just eggs. They have the potential and life in them, but the first ancestral race doesn't seem to be able to create whole planets. Now it is stated that the White Moon got to Earth first. See, the wording there implies that the Earth was already present, and then later the Black Moon smashed into Earth, creating First Impact. So it can be inferred that the Earth was already pre-existing. Also, why would the first ancestral race send eggs out to somewhere if, according to this theory, the moons could just create planets out of nowhere? No, the first ancestral race sent moons out to locations they already knew existed and could support life. If they could make planets, they could just put them right outside of their home planets or in their system. No need to send life somewhere else, or maybe they made the Earth itself. Anyways, this was my attempt at the Neon Genesis Evangelion Iceberg. I hope the brain cells that I sacrificed for this video research didn't die in vain. Also, Asuka is by far the better girl than Rei. I didn't want to give that out up until the end of the video so I didn't appear too biased. Anyways, thank you.